to day 3. We've been here 2 days already. It's already day 3. Who could believe it? Today we're talking about embedded finance. The whole day is themed around the subject of embedded finance. But just perhaps a recap of the last couple of days. We've been hearing a lot about the mindset needed to drive transformation, to drive innovation. We've been talking about motivations. What are the motivations for innovators to innovate, but also for institutions to digitize? And we've also been talking about the gaps. How do we mine those gaps? Fintech is maturing globally, but also in this region. But there are still massive opportunities. It's just that the way that the market is looking at the opportunities has changed a little bit. To that end, we kick off this morning with Ian Pettigrew at HSBC. Ian's going to give us a top-down global perspective of embedded finance and some of the things that the bank, that HSBC is thinking about globally and in the region. So with that, Ian, we welcome you to the stage. Please give Ian a warm welcome. And of course, make use of the day. Please make sure you ask questions throughout the day and enjoy.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Excellent. Welcome to day 3 of the Fintech Surge event down here at Dubai Harbour. So my name's Ian Pettigrew. I look after innovation and treasury solutions for HSBC, based out here in the Middle East. And I'd like to thank the organisers for giving me the opportunity to come in and talk about embedded finance and banking as a service this morning. And we're really going to look at kind of setting the scene. So what is embedded finance? Why is it important to the global economy? And how do you go about it? And some of the things that HSBC are going to be doing in relation to it, some live examples. For some reason, my presentation's not coming up. Oh, there we go. Okay. Here we go. Excellent. Okay, so banking is changing. We all know that. Okay. Value creation within banking and within digital platform economy is changing. And digitizing is really changing how banks and platform providers and corporates can join together to provide value-added service to customers. In addition to that, the customer's expectations, the end user's expectations of any financial services product or any platform product is changing as well. They want to be undertaking the jobs and tasks that they're doing as an end user in a contextualized way within the platform. They don't want to be going out between different apps, different e-commerce sites, different payment platforms to be undertaking their roles. They want everything to be in the right place at the right time and contextualized. And I think amongst all of the myriad of changes and developments that are happening in the financial services space, many of which you've heard about over the last couple of days and you'll continue to hear about today and tomorrow, I think embedded finance is really up there as being one of the most important in today's economy. Now, a significant driver of that is it comes from the ability for banks and corporates to start to diversify revenue streams. Okay, so that comes down to the bottom of it, is how do banks and how do corporates continue to diversify revenue streams? And embedded finance is a very, very key way of doing this. It gives financial services providers, insurance companies, any other kind of financial services company the ability to get their products and services in front of new clients in new ways. So they act as a new distribution channel for financial services. And all the while it improves that customer service and that user experience. And I think that's one of the key things that we're going to see throughout all of today's sessions is about this real focus on the user. And that's what it comes down to. So from the platform provider perspective, how do they control the user journey? How do they control the user experience? How do they keep the user within their platform, within their app, within their ecosystem for longer? Because the longer they're inside your app, the longer they're inside your platform, the stickier that revenue becomes, the stickier that relationship becomes, the more you can cross-sell to them. And that really comes down to the fundamentals of platform business models. And the embedded finance part of that really, really aids it. So before we go into it, let's just take a little bit about what embedded finance and banking as a service mean. And I'm going to use the two terms sort of fairly interchangeably throughout the whole session, embedded finance, banking as a service. And really when it comes down to it, It's about putting financial services and financial products in front of users in non-banking environments, so in non-banking platforms. Okay, that's really the kind of crux of it. And the way that we kind of see at HSBC is sort of relatively simple in terms of theory. It's a lot more complicated in terms of practice and integration and implementation. I'll talk about that a little bit. So really it's about embedding products and services of a financial nature using API technology into non-banking platforms to provide value-added services. And that's really what it comes down to, okay? Now, the how you do that can be quite complicated, and I'll go on and talk about that. And I'll talk about some of the, the lessons that we're learning at HSBC, some of the things that we're thinking about HSBC, and some of the use cases that we've implemented embedded financing in. And I think when we talk about the different types of service that can be used, I think what you'll tend to see is that payments is probably up there as being the key use case when it comes to embedded finance, to embedded payments. But it is equally possible to be able to embed other types of products, such as lending products, such as working capital optimization products, FX products, trade and supply chain products, even insurance products. So how does it happen? I think really it's been led by the advent of API technology. Now, we all know that APIs have been around for a long, long time. I think recently they've seen a real kind of resurgence in terms of their application, in terms of their ease of use. And that, along with the advent of cloud computing and microservices layers, allows banks and corporates to begin to talk much more seamlessly and much more cooperatively. So what does it mean for the corporate, and what does it mean for the bank? From a corporate's perspective, what do they get from this relationship? Okay, that's one of the key things. And I think from the corporate side, it's around this contextualized financial products where and when their users need it. I've spoken about embedding payments, embedding FX, embedding trade and supply chain. All of these can, in theory, be leveraged by corporates to vastly improve the service offering that they have within their platform. And I mentioned before that the better the service offering inside the platform, the more likely it is you're going to gain clients from that, and you're going to be able to get sticky client transactions on that. And by providing these services within their own ecosystem, the platform provider, the tech player, the marketplace, they control the whole end-to-end journey. They control the entire user experience. And that's incredibly important from a digital platform business model perspective. They want to control everything. They want to keep the customers inside at all times. If the customer has to go out to another app or another banking provider or another website to be able to complete a task, be that make a payment or apply for a credit card or open a bank account, it takes away value from their proposition and increases the chance that their customer is not going to complete their transaction and is going to go somewhere else. The other part of this is around revenue streams, okay? Because ultimately, this is what we're here for, is to generate revenue. And from the corporate's perspective, this can allow them to create new revenue streams and add to their bottom line. And how do they do that? And typically, they're doing that through revenue share. Okay, so the banking provider that they're working with is embedding their capabilities into the platform. There's then a revenue share taking place between the banking provider and the platform provider for every transaction that takes place. Now, in a traditional world, those revenue streams were not available to the platform provider because everything was done through to the bank. Now, the level by which that revenue stream is shared is obviously going to differ depending on the transaction type, the transaction volume, who's providing the capability, where and when it's being surfaced. And additionally, it's going to come down to the risk profile of the individual transaction type that is taking place as well. Okay, so for those riskier transaction types where the financial services provider is perhaps owning more risk, so if you think things like credit card provision, trade finance, supply chain finance and lending, the bank is obviously taking a greater risk. Therefore, the likelihood is the revenue share is going to move more towards the bank side. When it's purely a transactional opportunity, like a payment, then it maybe becomes a bit more equitable. But that depends on the platform provider, the financial service provider, and the risk attached to it. Now, from the bank side, this is a golden opportunity. Now, I'm obviously talking from the bank side here, working for HSBC. It's a golden opportunity for banks to be able to create very, very sticky relationships with their corporate customers and the platform providers that exist within their book. Okay? Because if you are seamlessly integrated, fully integrated, then you have a true kind of collaboration approach and a true kind of co-creation approach being seen. And that's really, really important from a bank's perspective. The other thing from a bank's perspective, along with the revenues that would be generated from this, is access to market share. Okay? So if you're looking as a financial services provider and you're looking at embedding your payments capability or FX capability into a platform that has tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of users globally, that creates a really, really attractive client acquisition tool for a bank. And that's, I think, one of the key points from our perspective is how do we get our products and services in front of more customers at a lower acquisition cost? Okay, so that's one of the other key drivers from a bank's perspective for embedded finance. So looking at a number of use cases then, which I think is quite important when it comes to this. Again, we're going to keep it quite simple when we come to our use cases. So looking at how you move funds, how you store and manage funds, and lending. And we tend to bucket our propositions into these three different pools. Okay, so the first one around moving funds, that's your payments. And I'll talk about an example we're doing with an organization in the US called Oracle NetSuite, where we're doing payments automation with them and invoice processing, and also cross-border movement of money as well, and the FX solutions attached to that. On the store and management of funds, so that's things like opening bank accounts, deposit products, wallet capabilities, all embedded again through the platforms. And then you've got the lending side of it. Okay, so can you embed trade and supply chain? Can you embed traditional lending products, credit cards for working capital optimization? So if we think about payments, for an example, to begin with. So as I said at the beginning, I think when we talk about embedded finance, payments is probably the first thing that springs to people's minds. And here, it can really vastly improve the client's experience depending on where within the platform that's being surfaced. With payments being able to be executed at the touch of a button through a platform instead of having to come out into another app, adds a tremendous amount of value for the client. So where I work within HSBC, we work within the wholesale banking, commercial banking side. So our clients is usually in the B2B space. So they're running treasuries. If they can integrate their entire payments processing platform into their ERP or their treasury management system without ever having to upload files or rekey payments into a banking app, that provides a huge amount of value. On the FX side of it, again, not having to go out to a boutique provider or go out to anywhere else to provide your FX solutions, everything can be built into the platform to be able to do that. And if you're a marketplace, for example, and you are offering capabilities to sellers across your marketplace, having the ability to help them manage cross-border movement of funds and the FX management that comes along with that directly within the platform itself adds tremendous amount of value to them. On the lending side of it, I guess you can split that down into kind of two elements of it. You've got the kind of embedded learning and point of sale financing. So if you're a B2B platform, the ability to incorporate trade finance solutions into that platform to seamlessly integrate both the buyer and the seller, again, that's providing enormous amounts of value. If you're in a B2C type environment and you want to provide some point of sale capabilities like buy now, pay later, again, that's providing an immense amount of value to the end user, and you'll start to see a reduction in things like abandonment rates or abandoned carts because you get the financing solutions right in front of them. They don't need to go out to anywhere else to get that financing solution for the capability. Even if they're using a credit card, they can still add that financing solution directly onto the credit card, directly within your platform. And we've seen that through the rise of BNPL solutions across the region, across the world recently. That's a real value add for customers. And then in terms of like working capital optimization, again, coming back to that, that corporate finance, that treasury side of things, if you're an ERP provider or a treasury management solution provider, being able to provide working capital optimization tools within your platforms, things like overdrafts, things like credit cards, virtual credit cards, again, is adding huge amounts of value to your end customer. And if you can keep your customer in your platform, they're going to transact more, you're going to be able to cross-sell to them more. So let's just take a little look at one example that the HSBC's done. And actually, before I talk about that, I'll talk about another one briefly. That when we talk about embedded finance, a lot of the time, people are going to talk about banks embedding into non-banking environments. That's what I kind of started off talking about at the beginning of the session. But it is also equally capable for banks to provide into banking environments as well. So what we've seen at HSBC is we've been working with another vendor called Finastra to provide a tool where we can embed FX rates provided by HSBC into mid-tier banks for them to provide to their customers. Again, the mid-tier bank controls the customer experience end-to-end. It's HSBC and Finastra that's providing the mechanism for those rates to be provided in currencies that the mid-tier bank just can't operate and can't provide to their customer base on their own. So we do have banks providing to banks providing to insurance companies, banks providing to non-banks. It's really, really a mesh across it. This example here that we had with Oracle NetSuite in the US, I think is a great example from a kind of B2B space. And this is a live example. We went live with Oracle NetSuite last year. And we'll talk about through why this makes sense for HSBC, why it makes sense for Oracle. And that will help give you a flavor about how to start to construct embedded finance programs and what to look out for and some of the challenges and some of the learnings that we got from it, which I think is important to share. So Oracle NetSuite is an ERP provider, or an ERP platform provided by Oracle. It's really aimed at small to medium-sized organizations with a high growth trajectory with international banking needs. Now, this is the first learning point that I want to share with you here, okay? Because the type of customer that Oracle NetSuite will use Oracle NetSuite, sorry, is exactly the type of customer that HSBC wants to work with, okay? They're growing quickly, they're in the MME space, and they have international needs. And that's some of the core tenets for HSBC's strategy in terms of client acquisition. Okay? Other banks will have different types of strategies and therefore want to work with different types of partner. Okay, so all three of those things are important to HSBC. All three of those things are important to Oracle NetSuite. So we've immediately got a kind of cohesion point between the platform provider and between the bank. We've got a common goal that we're working towards there. And I think where this is really important is you have to get a sweet spot, making sure that each participant within this ecosystem is both gaining value and providing value. So we're going to call that a tri-party value exchange. So from the platform provider's perspective, so in this case Oracle NetSuite, what value are they getting and what value are they providing? So the value they're getting is they're getting a comprehensive suite of financial products from HSBC embedded directly into their platform. What value are they providing to their customers? Contextualized financial services when they need it, how they need it at the right time. From the bank's perspective, where's the value? The value is we're getting access to new revenue streams. We're getting access to tens of thousands of customers, which really improves our client acquisition strategy and reduces the cost to acquire, which for a bank can be quite hard. Onboarding a brand new customer can incur fairly high charges or fairly high costs from a client acquisition perspective. So if you can do that completely seamlessly, completely API driven from account opening to KYC to digital client servicing, all through somebody else's platform, you've almost got a captive audience there. Okay, so it really helps us scale. and gets our products and services in front of our customers without having to employ large numbers of relationship bankers or coverage teams or client service teams. It can all be done digitally. Now, the ability to do that to provide that fully kind of end-to-end API-driven account onboarding KYC is going to differ from country to country, jurisdiction to jurisdiction, because of the regulations that are in place. And we're looking at where we can do that and how we can do that in a number of different countries. We were able to do it, I won't say easily in the US, but the capability is there. The regulatory support is there to be able to do that, so we can take advantage of it. And in the customer side, what are they getting? They're getting access to these financial products that they need when they need it, okay? So let's take an example of a customer within NetSuite using the financial services tools provided by HSBC through the Suite Banking app, okay? The customer can take advantage of payments automation, okay? So when they're processing their invoices, when they're processing their expense claims, when they're doing all of their payments, supplier payments, vendor payments, whatever it may be, the invoice capability is directly linked up to the payments capability provided by HSBC. And it's done in an intelligent way, so the right type of payment is provided to the customer to execute that payment at the right time. And that allows the customer to take advantage of preferential payment terms or other payment benefits provided by their vendors. Okay? So that's all automated and built into the platform. The account information and payments data is already encapsulated within the NetSuite platform provided by HSBC, so it feeds seamlessly into the ERP. It provides seamlessly into their account information statement. So they can provide all of the reconciliation automated, all of their statements are updated. Okay? The other part of NetSuite is it provides accounting services, it provides tax services. These are all provided by Oracle NetSuite, but the data, the information is all fed through HSBC, through the APIs, directly into that platform. So the customer never needs to come out into an HSBC environment to be able to undertake their payments, their reconciliations, their receivables management. It's all done through the platform. And then on the working capital optimization side, we can provide virtual credit cards through the platform. So if the customer is doing their accounting, if they've got an expense coming up that they maybe don't want to use cash for, they want to use their cash for something else or it's held under deposit somewhere, they can take out a virtual credit card through the NetSuite platform and manage that virtual credit card through the NetSuite platform without having to come out to talk to HSBC card platforms to do that. Everything's encapsulated within that one platform. So if you're a small to medium enterprise who probably doesn't have a huge finance function, who maybe doesn't have a dedicated treasury management organization within your company, you can start to see the real benefit of having everything in one place, a truly kind of super ERP, if you will. And we've worked really, really hard with Oracle to get this live. And as I said, it comes from everything from account opening to KYC to digital customer servicing, all API driven through there. So how did we get there? So let's just kind of finish up on a little bit about how we get there and how you can, whether you're a bank or whether you're a platform provider or a fintech, you can think about how to kind of go about doing some of these things. You have to have a very, very clear strategy. Okay, it's very easy to get distracted, and it's very, very easy to get pushed and pulled in a number of different directions. So as a bank, you have to have a very, very clear strategy in terms of who you want to work with and the types of clients that they are working with. So from a bank's perspective, who we are providing banking capabilities to, us knowing who that end customer is massively important from a KYC perspective, from an AML perspective, from a risk perspective. Okay? So you have to have a very clear strategy about who it is you want to go and work with. Okay? If you're going to go and work with a platform provider and their end customers are not in a sector or a segment or a jurisdiction that aligns with your strategy, then you're going to end up rejecting more customers than you onboard. And that actually detracts value from both the bank and the platform provider. And that is the antithesis of everything you want to do as part of embedded finance. So your strategy has to be very, very clear. And your customer strategy has to align very, very clearly with the platform provider. So it's very important to have those very upfront conversations straight away and align that as much as you possibly can. From a bank's perspective, obviously, HSBC, very established bank, over 150 years, 70 countries around the world. We are a big organization, okay? And big organizations can be a little bit difficult to navigate and change direction in. I think everybody knows that. But I think to be able to take advantage of the benefits of embedded finance, you need to have a dedicated team within your organization that is truly focused on digital banking, on platform business models, and really understands digital banking and platform business models. They need to understand the frameworks that exist there. They need to understand both the technology within your organization, but also the technology that exists outside of your organization and how to bring that in, and to create seamless propositions that align to the strategic direction of the overall organization. And that's not easy to do. That's really hard to do, okay? So you have to get the right people in to do that. And as a bank, you might need to look outside of your organization to bring those people in with those right skill sets. Those people who can be creative, but who also can be flexible and work within a very regulated, very governance-controlled environment as a bank needs to be. But if you find the right people and you define the right strategy, then you can really start to build some really incredible things. So I was part of the team that built the NetSuite proposition here within HSBC, and we were learning every single day. We had some really, really clever people come and join us from outside the bank. We had some very, very clever people from within the bank, all working together to define that strategy, working with the vendor to be able to create the solution. So I think, just to kind of close on this, and maybe I can open to some questions if I've got some time. I've got maybe 5 minutes for questions. You need to stop looking at these relationships as a vendor, supplier, buyer type of relationship. If you're going into the embedded finance banking as a service stream, you really have to look at your partners as partners. You have to look at them as collaborators. You have to look at them as co-creators. Okay? Because if you're working on a vendor-buyer relationship, it isn't going to work. You really have to work harmoniously and seamlessly. And it is a hard path. Okay? I'm not going to say it's easy to do this sort of stuff, but it is really very interesting. There are huge amounts of value that can be generated for both the financial services provider, the platform provider, and the end customer. And if you do it right, you can have an awful lot of fun when you're doing it. It's a hard path, but I think if you get it right, it can be very, very fruitful for everybody. So I hope I've kind of set the scene a little bit in terms of what embedded finance is, how we're looking at it. I think there's some panels coming up where we're going to explore some of these themes in a lot more detail. I think that customer service focus, that user experience journey is a theme that is going to be constant through the entire day. And you have to have an almost kind of maniacal approach to the end customer and an obsessive approach to the end customer. Okay. Thanks very much. I'll open up for questions if anybody has any.
Thank you. Yeah. Do we have questions from the audience? Yep. Somebody from the front here.
Wow, thanks for sharing. That's very impressive. So let me introduce myself. My name is Larry. So we run an API-driven bank in Kenya, one of the pioneers to launch the BaaS in East Africa. So there are two questions. Number one, for example, the big bank like HSBC usually actually is like very heavy, right? So how do you navigate in a big organization to launch BaaS? And how far are you right now like launching it with the partner? And then number two, along the way, when you work with the partners in terms of launching, for example, Oracle or some other partners, like what is the most critical thing, or what's the challenge, most critical challenge actually encountered along the way? And thanks.
Okay, so two questions there. So the first one, you're right. So in terms of developing a kind of banking as a service stack within an organization like HSBC, where large banks like HSBC have a large technology stack. We've got a lot of technology debt. Every single bank is going to be exactly the same. So we almost had to kind of separate ourselves from a mindset perspective, think about how do we want to build that technology stack from the ground up, and then work to see how we can fit that into the existing platform structure that we've got, because we've got governance, controls, frameworks that we need to adhere to. So that was difficult. No, I'm not going to say that was easy, but we had a lot of very clever technology people helping us with that. Okay, we're always looking at how we can improve that stack. Okay, so yes, we've developed the banking as a service stack. We've launched it with Oracle NetSuite that we have here. We've got further platform providers coming on board with that. Is that stack static? No. So we're constantly looking at how we can engrade that stack. We're always looking for partners, providers to help us come in and see how we can improve that stack. Okay, so this is a constant journey for us. Okay, and I think you'll probably recognize that as running one of these providers, right? You've built your initial stack. You're constantly looking to see how you can upgrade, how you can change, how you can make it more flexible, how you can make it more seamless. I think from a challenges perspective, what's the most important thing? Propositionally, it's about those customer needs. So are the customers that you're ultimately going to be servicing through the platform the type of customers that you want to be servicing as a financial institution? I think that is one of the absolutely key things for something like HSBC. Because if your customers are, if the customers are in a jurisdiction where we're not present in, or where we're only strategically looking at mid-tier or upper corporate customers, but the platform is providing in the business banking or micro segment, there's a mismatch in terms of proposition there, okay? And that's going to be very, very difficult to overcome. So I think that initial conversation around who it is you're targeting is absolutely key, and then the technology almost kind of comes behind that. I think that's really, really important for a financial services organization.
Thanks.
Thanks. I think I've got maybe time for one more, two more.
Thank you. I'm Abdullah from YKB Bank in Yemen. I'm asking about NetSuite with FlexCube. If we say the integration between two systems, how can be, and how I can make them in one. We make very difficulties between integration between FlexCube banking system and ERP system. We have very big issue.
Yeah, it's very, very challenging to combine the two things together, right? Yes. So, we obviously built our API stack and our developer portals as much as possible. We already had an API-driven Treasury suite within the organization that we provide to our corporate customers. So our corporate customers can communicate directly with APIs and HSBC already. So we already had the foundations of the technology stack there. We had to work very, very closely with the technology team at Oracle NetSuite to be able to combine those two things together. As I said, it's not an easy thing to do. It's very, very difficult to do. But if you've got the right people, as I said before, you might need to, from a bank's perspective, you might need to bring in outside experience to support you on that. We did from a technology perspective, we did from a propositional perspective, because it's that important. But it is really about, having a very, very open, collaborative, co-creative mindset between you and the platform provider. If you're both set in your ways in terms of how you do things, it isn't going to work. So you have to have a very open dialogue about it.
I have a question for you, Ian. You've been in multiple markets, worked in different regions. Obviously, you're based in the UAE now. How does the UAE and the Gulf or Middle East market compare at the level of the embedded finance innovation opportunity? Do you see that the customers are more in demand or more ready for innovation and embedded finance demand here than in other markets?
I think whether they're ready for more than other markets, I would probably say they're on a par with other markets. I think the opportunity in the Middle East is absolutely enormous. There are real scale platform players here that don't operate, in Europe and Asia and the US. This is absolutely golden opportunity for them, and golden opportunity for banks in the region as well to provide some of these services. So they're definitely up there. I think from a regulatory framework perspective, the central banks around the region are very supportive of fintech innovation, and that is something you absolutely need to be able to have, to foster an embedded finance environment. So the regulators are forward-thinking. I think the banks are forward-thinking. There's a great fintech community that exists in the Middle East. I think the customers are ready for it. I think the platform providers are ready for it. So yeah, I think absolutely we're on a par with the rest of the world. Absolutely, yeah. I think we've got one more question.
Hi, my name is Wafa, and I'm a software engineer at a fintech company in Dubai. It is impressive to see how HSBC has its APIs up and running. But I understand that the regulations for open banking in the US and in the UK are more mature. We're still in the initial stages here in the UAE and in the Middle East. What advice do you have to local banks in the Middle East to become more adaptive and less reactive to these regulations to help us fintechs collaborate together and build better fintech technologies, really?
That's a very, very good question. Yeah, so obviously the open banking frameworks that exist in Europe, act as an almost kind of trigger point for some of these things. I think the Europe is more advanced than the US, for example, from a truly open banking perspective. You don't necessarily need an open banking framework to be able to complete an embedded finance program, because I think one of the natures of open banking is the ability to provide consent through, so any fintech can be able to access anybody's data if you provide consent. I think in an embedded finance situation, it's almost a closed loop, right? So you've got this kind of tacit contractual agreement between the end user, the platform provider, and the bank. So as long as you've developed your API stack, you don't necessarily need an open banking framework to be able to deploy that. But I think regional banks here, local banks here, do need to be looking at the developments that are taking place in the US and Asia, and Singapore particularly, and in Europe, about the types of standards that are being created for the developments of APIs, because that's ultimately what's driven a lot of this development here. So they really do need to be keeping a weather eye on it, because I don't think it's a matter of if open banking is coming into the region, it's more a matter of when open banking is coming into the region. So they really do need to be looking at those standards that exist and starting to think about their strategy and developing that out at the moment.
As a bank that's across this region, we'll hear a lot. Fintechs are always saying, it's a great market to be in, but there are challenges. It's small markets, and every place has its own rules and regulations. How do you at HSBC navigate that, or are you working with some of your partners to help some of those sort of fintech innovation partners? Are you working with them also to help them navigate some of those challenges?
So I think with the number of countries that HSBC are in, we've obviously got we have good relationships with the the central banks, the regulators, and all of the countries that we operate in. I think where HSBC can have an advantage is that often when a regulator starts to implement a new type of banking structure, that banking structure has been implemented somewhere else. Therefore, we've already built a technology stack that we can take, lift and shift and plug into a new country. And that gives us, there's obviously nuances and differences in terms of the application of that particular regulation, but that does give us a head start in terms of the technology stack. We absolutely do work with fintechs in every single market to help us provide solutions that we might not want to build ourselves, right? Because we don't necessarily want to go out and build technology stacks for every single product set. Okay, we did it for APIs. We found that very important. We built our own technology stack for banking as a service. Will we want to work with fintechs as we move along? Absolutely, 100%, and plug them into the technology stacks that we already have. Because, for those of you who work in fintech, for those of you who work in banks, the banks don't necessarily have all of the answers. We can't always build things in as quick a way as we want to be able to build them, or as cost effectively as we want to build them, because of the technology deck and the technology stack that we have. So there are absolutely opportunities to work with banks like HSBC to help us implement systems and solutions.
I don't want to keep you on stage forever, but just there's a lot to unpack in what you've been talking about. Are there any particular areas that you're interested in, or the bank is sort of focused on, where you might need some of those partnerships or support from the innovation community?
So yeah, I think so. Embedded finance is absolutely one, okay? Because every market is going to have a different set of end users, from a customer design experience, from a user experience. All of the platforms that exist in different markets are all operating on different technology stacks, and there are always an opportunity for banking as a service intermediaries to help plug between the corporate, the platform provider, and the bank. So I think you can kind of look at it in a number of different ways. So you've got true big tech platform providers whose entire raison d'etre is the provision of marketplaces. You think the Amazons of the world, or whatever it might be. Okay, now, they are very adept at deploying technical solutions, and they're very, very adept at working with other organizations to help them fill those gaps. If you move into the corporate space, where the platform isn't necessarily the business model, the platform is a way to provide products and services to their end customer base. Okay, so it moves me a means to an end. They will need help in terms of how to get the right technology in place to connect up to their internal system. So there's always an opportunity there for a banking as a service embedded finance player to pitch out to those corporates who are looking to move into a marketplace scenario or looking to move into an app scenario. It doesn't even need to be a marketplace; it can be an app. They don't necessarily have the tech expertise in-house, and that's where I think there can be a real sweet spot.
Thank you very much, Ian, for a really insightful presentation. Please thank Ian for our opening presentation this morning. We're now going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with the panel, and we're going to be drilling a little bit more deeply into some of those things that Ian was referring to there, the partnerships, the data, and the opportunity to kind of lead to go where the customer is and build viable businesses from that innovation. So join us back in about 10 minutes, and we'll be back with our next panel conversation. Thanks very much.